From the ashes of empires, a new world order is about to be forged in fire and blood. In an age of unprecedented progress, tensions simmer beneath the surface. From 1870, a web of secret alliances and a relentless arms race set the stage for a conflict that will engulf the globe. One single bullet, fired on June 28, 1914, will ignite the fuse. The world watches in horror as Archduke Franz Ferdinand is assassinated, and a regional dispute spirals into a war of unimaginable scale. Millions will march into the meat grinder of the Western Front, caught in the hellish stalemate of trench warfare. On the vast Eastern Front, empires will clash and crumble. From the sands of the Middle East to the far-flung colonies in Africa and Asia, the war knows no borders. In 1917, a sleeping giant awakens as the United States enters the fray, tipping the scales of power. After 4 long years of brutal combat, an armistice is signed on November 11, 1918. But the peace brokered by the Treaty of Versailles will sow the seeds of an even greater conflict. This is the story of the Great War, the war to end all wars. A story of sacrifice, valor, and the catastrophic birth of the modern world. Our story begins not in 1914, but decades earlier. Following its victory in the Franco-Prussian War of 1870, a newly unified Germany, under Chancellor Otto von Bismarck, became the dominant power in continental Europe. Fearing French revenge, Bismarck masterfully wove a complex web of alliances designed to isolate France and maintain peace on Germany's terms. This delicate balance began to unravel after 1890, when the new German Emperor, Kaiser Wilhelm II, dismissed Bismarck and embarked on an aggressive foreign policy known as Weltpolitik, or world policy. This ambition directly challenged Britain's naval supremacy, sparking a costly and dangerous naval arms race. By the early 1900s, Europe was divided into 2 armed camps: the Triple Alliance, consisting of Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy, and the Triple Entente, an understanding between France, Russia, and Great Britain. A pervasive culture of militarism glorified war, and generals drafted intricate mobilization plans that, once initiated, would be nearly impossible to stop. The spark that ignited this powder keg was struck in the volatile Balkans. On June 28, 1914, Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, and his wife Sophie were visiting Sarajevo, the capital of recently annexed Bosnia. A group of Serbian nationalists, seeking to create a greater Serbia, saw their chance. After a first failed attempt with a bomb, a 19-year-old named Gavrilo Princip found himself face-to-face with the Archduke's stalled car. He fired 2 shots, killing both Franz Ferdinand and his wife. Outraged, Austria-Hungary issued a harsh ultimatum to Serbia on July 23, designed to be rejected. When Serbia failed to comply fully, Austria-Hungary declared war on July 28, 1914. The intricate system of alliances clicked into place. Russia mobilized to support its Slavic ally, Serbia. Germany, allied with Austria-Hungary, declared war on Russia on August 1st and on France 2 days later. On August 4th, Germany invaded neutral Belgium to outflank French forces, a move that brought the British Empire into the war to defend Belgian neutrality. The dominoes had fallen. The Great War had begun. All sides expected a short, decisive war. Germany's Schlieffen Plan aimed to knock France out quickly before turning to face Russia. However, the German advance was halted in September 1914 at the First Battle of the Marne. What followed was the race to the sea, as both sides tried to outflank each other, digging a continuous line of trenches that stretched from the Swiss border to the North Sea. This was the Western Front. Life in the trenches was a nightmare of mud, rats, and constant fear. Soldiers faced machine guns, heavy artillery, and poison gas. Offensives like the Battle of the Somme in 1916 and the Battle of Passchendaele in 1917 resulted in hundreds of thousands of casualties for mere yards of ground. It was a brutal war of attrition. While the Western Front was locked in a stalemate, the fighting on the Eastern Front was more fluid, covering a much larger territory. Here, the armies of Germany and Austria-Hungary clashed with the massive but poorly equipped Russian army. Early Russian advances were checked by the Germans at the decisive Battle of Tannenberg in August 1914. The war placed an unbearable strain on the Russian state, leading to massive casualties, food shortages, and political unrest that would ultimately culminate in the Russian Revolution of 1917. Meanwhile, in October 1914, the Ottoman Empire entered the war on the side of the Central Powers, opening new fronts in the Caucasus, Mesopotamia, and at the Gallipoli Peninsula, where an Allied attempt to seize the Dardanelles in 1915 ended in a costly failure. This was truly a global war. The European powers drew upon the vast manpower and resources of their colonial empires. Over 1 million Indian soldiers fought for the British Empire, serving on the Western Front, in the Middle East, and Africa. France deployed hundreds of thousands of troops from its African colonies. Canada, Australia, and New Zealand made significant contributions, forging national identities in battles like Vimy Ridge and Gallipoli. The war also saw fighting in Africa, as Allied forces moved to capture German colonies, and naval battles raged in the Atlantic, Pacific, and Indian Oceans, disrupting global trade and communication. For the first 3 years, the United States maintained a policy of neutrality, though it supplied the Allies with weapons and loans. Public opinion began to shift due to Germany's unrestricted submarine warfare. The sinking of the British passenger liner Lusitania on May 7, 1915, which killed over 100 Americans, caused widespread outrage. The final straw was the Zimmermann telegram. In January 1917, British intelligence intercepted a secret message from Germany to Mexico, proposing a military alliance against the United States should it enter the war. The news was made public, and on April 6, 1917, President Woodrow Wilson asked Congress to declare war on Germany, stating that the world must be made safe for democracy. The arrival of fresh American troops, the Doughboys, would provide a crucial boost to the exhausted Allies. By 1918, the tide had turned. Russia, now under Bolshevik rule, signed the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk in March, exiting the war and allowing Germany to transfer troops to the west. Germany launched a massive spring offensive, its last gamble for victory. The offensive made initial gains but was ultimately halted. With the arrival of over 1 million American troops, the Allies launched the 100 Days Offensive in August 1918, which systematically broke through German lines. With its allies collapsing and revolution brewing at home, Germany's military leaders informed the Kaiser that the war was lost. On November 9th, Kaiser Wilhelm II abdicated. 2 days later, on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month of 1918, an armistice was signed in a railway carriage in Compiègne, France. The guns on the Western Front finally fell silent. The war left over 17 million dead and 20 million wounded. The Paris Peace Conference convened in 1919 to shape the post-war world. The resulting Treaty of Versailles, signed on June 28, 1919, 5 years to the day after the Archduke's assassination, imposed harsh terms on Germany. It was forced to accept full blame for the war, pay crippling reparations, disarm its military, and lose its colonies and territories. President Wilson's vision of a just peace and a League of Nations was compromised by the desires of other Allied leaders to punish Germany. The treaty redrew the map of Europe, dismantling the Austro-Hungarian, Ottoman, and Russian empires and creating new nations. But the peace it created was fragile. The resentment and economic hardship it caused in Germany, coupled with the global economic depression and the rise of aggressive ideologies, would pave the road directly to another, even more devastating, World War just 2 decades later. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into history.